There is a corridor 39 kilometers wide in the Indian Ocean. Only 39 kilometers. You can cross it by car in 20 minutes. And through that corridor passes 20% of all the oil the planet consumes. The fuel that heats your homes, that moves the planes, that manufactures the plastic of every product you buy. Iran closed it 3 weeks ago, and since then, the world has been paying the consequences. But now the United States has made a decision that could change everything, and that could trigger the most dangerous phase of this war. Thousands of Marines, 2 amphibious assault ships, fighter jets, Apache helicopters, everything moving right now toward that 39-kilometer corridor. And on the table, an option that just a few weeks ago seemed unthinkable: landing on Iranian soil. If that happens, we will no longer be talking about an air war. We will be talking about something completely different and much more dangerous. In the next few minutes, I am going to explain exactly what is happening in the Strait of Hormuz, what the Americans are doing, what Iran can do to respond, and what all this means for the price you pay every time you take your car to refuel or turn on the heating. Stay until the end, because this is the most critical moment of this war since it began. Before getting into what is happening this week, you need to understand why the Strait of Hormuz is so important. Because if you don't understand that, you can't understand why the entire world has its eyes on that small patch of water. Imagine the Persian Gulf as a giant lake. Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Iraq, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain. All the world's major oil producers are inside that lake, and that lake has only one exit to the sea. Just one. The Strait of Hormuz. It is the most important energy bottleneck on the planet. Around 21 million barrels of oil pass through there every day. 20% of the world's oil. 17% of the global liquefied natural gas. Without that corridor, the modern world's energy system simply does not work. Iran knows this perfectly well, and it uses it as a weapon. Since the United States and Israel launched Operation Epic Fury on February 28th, bombing Iran by surprise and killing Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, Tehran responded with what it had available, turning off the tap. Revolutionary Guard fast boats patrolling the strait, naval mines, missiles mounted on trucks hidden along the coasts, explosive drones against commercial vessels. Maritime traffic in the strait dropped to practically zero. We all felt the result. Brent crude oil surpassed $119. The price of gas tripled in days. Airlines began canceling routes. Goldman Sachs warned that prices could stay above $100 until 2027. And that was when Washington decided that enough was enough. If you want to truly understand this war, without noise or propaganda, subscribe and turn on the bell. We try to explain what is happening to you before everyone else tells it. On March 20th, 2026, the Pentagon launched a military offensive specifically designed to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. This is not an announcement. It is not a threat. It is an operation that is already underway as we record this video. What exactly does it consist of? U.S. forces have deployed a combination of military assets in the strait and its adjacent waters that haven't been seen together since the Iraq Wars. Let's break it down. A 10-attack aircraft, the famous Warthog. It's a plane designed to fly low and slow, highly resistant to damage, with a rotary cannon capable of destroying armor and vessels. Its mission in the strait: to locate and destroy the Iranian Revolutionary Guard fast boats that are blocking the passage of commercial ships. Apache helicopters, the most powerful attack helicopter in the American military, armed with Hellfire missiles and 30-millimeter machine guns. Their mission: to intercept the explosive drones that Iran is using to attack civilian ships in the Persian Gulf. Marines on the ground, Marine Corps Rapid Response Infantry units deployed to control islands near the southern coast of Iran, with the goal of neutralizing naval minefields and missile positions that threaten civilian traffic. The aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln, the giant that arrived in late January and serves as a platform for the F/A-18 Super Hornet fighters patrolling the Persian Gulf airspace. The initial result is significant. According to U.S. military sources, the campaign has already destroyed or damaged more than 120 Iranian vessels belonging to the Navy and the Revolutionary Guard. But there is a problem. A serious problem. Iran still has hundreds of boats hidden in underground hangars. It has naval mines scattered across the seabed. It has truck-mounted cruise missiles that move constantly to avoid being localized. In a 39-kilometer strait, with coasts on both sides, Iran's capacity to generate chaos and danger is enormous. Defense experts are categorical. Achieving total protection of the strait could take weeks, and 100% security might never be reached. But what is truly making military analysts around the world nervous is not what is already happening. It is what could happen in the coming days. Because Washington is moving pieces that go far beyond escorting ships and destroying boats. Listen carefully to these facts, because each one carries enormous weight. The USS AAA. It is an amphibious assault ship. That means it is basically a marine aircraft carrier. It departed from the American base in Okinawa, Japan, on March 11th. It crossed the South China Sea. It passed through the Strait of Malacca. And right now, it is sailing toward the Persian Gulf, carrying the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit. Approximately 2,200 soldiers ready for amphibious operations, evacuations, or ground combat. The USS Boxer. Another amphibious assault ship. This one departed from San Diego, California. It carries the 11th Marine Expeditionary Unit. More than 2,000 additional soldiers. Heading to the same destination, 2 amphibious assault ships, more than 4,000 Marines, helicopters, amphibious armored vehicles, landing craft, all the equipment necessary to take a beach. And here's the question everyone is asking. Why does the United States need 4,000 Marines with landing capabilities in the Persian Gulf? The White House has acknowledged that it is evaluating deployments that could include landings on the coast of Iran or on Kharg Island. Kharg. That name deserves a moment of our attention. Kharg Island is Iran's main oil export terminal. Approximately 90% of the crude oil that Iran exports to the world passes through it. It is a small island in the northern Persian Gulf, about 25 kilometers from the Iranian coast, and it is one of the most valuable strategic targets in the entire region. The United States has already attacked numerous targets on that island in recent days, and now it has 4,000 Marines with landing capabilities moving toward that area. A military expert cited by El Plural explained it bluntly. The expeditionary units have the capacity to take the island, but that doesn't mean it will be easy or that they will succeed. They could take the island and seize control of the infrastructure, but they would remain exposed to continuous Iranian attacks. In other words, taking Kharg is possible, but holding it would be another story. And there is something else that makes this possibility even more delicate. If American Marines land on Iranian soil, this is no longer an air war. It is an invasion. And the rules of the game change completely. While all this is happening, an incident occurred this week that silently shook military planners in Washington. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard published a video. In that video, what appears to be the moment a US F-35 stealth fighter is attacked in Iranian airspace is shown. The Pentagon confirmed the incident. One of its F-35s, a plane worth $100 million and designed to be practically invisible to radar, was forced to make an emergency landing at a U.S. airbase in the Middle East. This is very significant for several reasons. The F-35 is the most advanced fighter in the Western world. Its main feature is stealth. It is designed not to be detected by conventional radar systems. That Iran has been able to locate and attack it, even if only partially, as the pilot managed to escape, raises very serious questions about Iran's real detection and response capabilities. Does Iran have more advanced radar technology than believed? Did it receive help from Russia or China? Was it a stroke of luck or a real capability? For now, the Pentagon has not given explanations. but the video is there. And military planners have to take it very much into account when designing future operations. A $100 million plane, the most sophisticated in the American fleet, forced to make an emergency landing in the middle of an offensive over the strait. It is a sign that Iran, despite the damage suffered, retains defensive capabilities that should not be underestimated. While the United States launches its solo offensive, there is a political fracture that is becoming increasingly visible, and it has enormous consequences for what is to come. Trump wants his NATO allies to send warships to the Persian Gulf to escort oil tankers. He has asked for it. He has demanded it. And when they didn't listen to him, he reacted as Trump usually reacts. He called European leaders cowards. He accused them of complaining about high oil prices, but refusing to do anything about it. And he warned them, "We will remember." The European response has been cautious. 7 allies, the United Kingdom, France, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, Japan, and Canada, issued a joint statement condemning Iran for closing the strait and promising a readiness to contribute. But without ships, without concrete commitments, and with a very clear condition: any joint naval operation will only occur when hostilities cease. In other words, once the war ends, we will help. As long as it lasts, we will not. A researcher from the S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies in Singapore summarized it perfectly. I don't see the joint statement as anything more than a rhetorical stance intended to pressure Iran into de-escalating. Words, not ships, and there is a very specific reason for that refusal. European allies were not consulted before the United States, and Israel launched Operation Epic Fury on February 28th. They were presented with a fait accompli, and now they are being asked to assume the political and military cost of a war they did not choose. That is the real fracture. It's not just that Europe doesn't want to help. It's that Europe feels it was dragged into a situation without being asked. And that has consequences that go far beyond this war. NATO has reportedly begun to rethink its stance. 22 countries are working on a strategy for reopening the strait. But the question is whether that rethink will arrive in time to make any difference. It would be a mistake to think that Iran is simply taking hits without the capacity to respond. This week, Iranian drones and missiles hit the Mina al-Ahmadi refinery in Kuwait, causing a fire in several units of the facility. The port of Yanbu in Saudi Arabia temporarily suspended its oil loading operations after being attacked by Iranian drones. Attacks on energy infrastructure in the United Arab Emirates were also reported. Iranian offensive capability in the Gulf remains real, although the United States has destroyed more than 120 Iranian vessels. Hundreds more remain hidden. Naval mines are especially difficult to neutralize. And truck-mounted cruise missiles, which move constantly, represent an enormous challenge for American military intelligence. Iran also has an ace up its sleeve that it hasn't fully played yet. The Iranian parliament is analyzing the possibility of imposing tolls on vessels crossing the strait. It is a measure that, if approved, would create what experts call forced interdependence. Countries that need oil, China, Japan, India, European nations, would be forced to negotiate directly with Tehran to guarantee their supply. It is a long-range political move that would turn Iran into an indispensable actor despite the war. China and India, which depend heavily on Gulf oil, are watching with a mix of alarm and opportunism. Neither wants the strait to remain closed, but neither wants to be dragged into a war that is not theirs. If you've made it this far, it's because you care about understanding what is happening. Let me know in the comments. Do you believe the U.S. is going to land Marines on Iranian soil? That is the million-dollar question right now. Everything I have told you so far may seem very distant. Wars, ships, missiles, military strategy. But there is a part of this story that affects you directly, and you are already paying for it. Brent crude reached $114 per barrel this week. It even hit peaks of $119. That is almost 50% more than a month ago, before the war started. What does that mean in practice? It means more expensive gasoline. Much more expensive. In the United States, the average price has already risen more than 16% in just a few weeks. In Europe, the impact is felt in electricity, in heating, in transportation. Goldman Sachs has published an analysis warning that prices could stay above $100 throughout 2026 and possibly into 2027. The International Monetary Fund calculated that every 10% rise in energy prices adds nearly half a percentage point to global inflation. Airlines are suffering. United Airlines estimates its fuel bill could rise by $11 billion if prices hold. They are cutting flights and suspending routes. The director of the International Energy Agency warned that it could take up to 6 months before the supply of oil and gas from the Gulf is fully restored. He called it the potential most serious energy crisis in recent history. And all of that depends on that 39-kilometer corridor, on whether the United States manages to reopen it, on whether Iran decides to yield or escalate, on whether the Marines land or not. What happens in the Strait of Hormuz in the coming weeks will determine in part what you pay at the gas station and on your electricity bill. We have all the facts on the table. Now comes the most important part. What does all this mean, and where could it go? What is clear? First, the American offensive in the Strait is already underway. This is not a threat or a bluff. Planes, helicopters, and Marines are operating in the Strait right now. The stated goal is to reopen commercial traffic. Second, the deployment of 4,000 Marines with amphibious capability is a massive escalation. Never before in this conflict has the United States sent a force with real ground landing capability. You don't do that just to escort ships. You do that when ground options are being evaluated. Third, Iran has shown this week that it remains capable of attacking high-value American assets. The F-35 forced into an emergency landing is a massive red flag. They are not militarily defeated, though they are heavily damaged. The 3 possible scenarios. Scenario 1, negotiated opening. American military pressure and the global economic crisis force Iran to negotiate some kind of agreement to reopen the strait. Not a peace treaty, but a tactical understanding. Oil prices would drop. Tension would decrease, though it wouldn't disappear. This is the best-case scenario, but it requires both sides to want a way out of this deadlock. Scenario 2, the seizure of Kharg. The United States decides that the only way to secure oil traffic is to take physical control of Iran's main terminal. The Marines land. This is a militarily possible operation. But the consequences are enormous. Iran would respond with everything it has. European allies would be left in an unsustainable political position, and the risk of uncontrolled escalation would be at its peak. Scenario 3, the prolonged stalemate. Neither side achieves its objectives. The United States fails to fully reopen the strait. Iran fails to expel American forces. The war freezes into a sort of conflict of attrition. Oil prices remain high for months. The global economy absorbs the blow, and the world learns to live with a new level of energy instability. Of the 3, the third is, sadly, the most likely in the short term. But the second is the one that worries me the most, because if it happens, the rules of the game change in a way that no one can fully predict. Which of these 3 scenarios do you think is most likely? Leave me your analysis in the comments. We have a community here that knows how to think, and I love reading your opinions. I am going to close with something that I believe is fundamental to understanding what is happening. We have been at war for almost a month between the United States, Israel, and Iran. A month in which thousands of people have died, most of them civilians. A month in which the Iranian leadership has been decapitated, its military infrastructure devastated, its economy collapsed. And yet, the Strait of Hormuz remains closed. Missiles are still flying. The Marines are on their way. There is a lesson that the history of the Middle East repeats time and time again, and that Washington seems to forget with astonishing regularity. It is much easier to win a war than to win the peace that comes after. Destroying the Iranian navy is possible. Taking Kharg Island is possible. Reopening the strait by force is possible. But what happens the day after? What regime governs Iran when this ends? Who rebuilds a country with thousands of civilian deaths and decades of accumulated resentment? And how many years will it take for the world to forget that a military power launched a surprise attack on another country while they were negotiating? Those questions do not have easy answers, and for that very reason, they are the most important ones. The Strait of Hormuz is not just a military problem. It is a mirror reflecting the fragility of the global energy system, the dependence we all have on the oil coming from that region, and the inability of the great powers to resolve their conflicts without resorting to bombings. In the coming weeks, that mirror is going to show us something very important about the kind of world we live in, and we will continue to be here telling you about it. If this video has given you something to think about, share it. That is what makes this channel grow. People who believe that being well-informed matters. See you in the next one.